Everyone who watched season 3 came away thinking the same thing. Soldier Boy is the one person who can actually beat Homelander. For one season, it felt like the gap had finally been closed, but it wasn't close. And the fight they actually had on screen proves it. Homelander walked away from a 3-on-1 and left on his own terms. When you break down what each of them can actually do, the matchup stops looking like a rivalry and starts looking like a poor matchup that season 3 dressed up very well. But the case for Soldier Boy is not nothing. He is the only person in the show's history to go punch for punch with Homelander and keep getting back up. Every hit Homelander landed, Soldier Boy absorbed. Every time John put him into a wall or a floor, he got back up.
John? Homelander. Just Homelander.
That's something Queen Maeve couldn't even do for long. Stormfront couldn't do it. Nobody else on the roster even gets close to surviving that kind of sustained punishment from Homelander. His nuke blast is also genuinely terrifying in a way that nothing else in the show is. It doesn't just damage Soupies, it strips their powers permanently by burning the compound Vi out of their system.
They've killed Crimson Countess, 7 other ones that survived. They're powerless. Soldier Boy fried the V right out of their blood somehow.
Kimiko lost her healing factor from it, Maeve lost everything, and crucially, Homelander fled the Herogasm fight rather than take a direct hit. The most powerful Soup alive decided the smart move was to leave the room. That's not nothing. Then there's the 80 years of actual military experience. Not training, not sparring, not controlled environments. Soldier Boy fought in real wars against real enemies before most of the other Soupies in this show were even born. His combat instincts aren't built from a lab or a PR team. They're built from decades of situations where losing meant dying. He knows how to read a fight, how to absorb damage without losing composure, and how to wait for the opening rather than force one that's not there. On top of all that, Homelander told Soldier Boy directly to his face that he was the only Soupy nearly as strong as him.
You were my hero growing up. You were the only one that was nearly as strong as me.
Buddy, you think you look strong? You're just a cheap knockoff.
That's not a throwaway line. John doesn't give compliments, he gives threat assessments. When Homelander looks at someone and acknowledges their strength, you take that seriously. Most people stop the argument there and call it a coin flip. They're missing 3 things that make this not a coin flip at all. The single biggest factor in this fight is the one that gets talked about the least. Homelander can fly, and Soldier Boy can't.
Bomb has a replacement, just a child, but they're convinced he'll be stronger than Soldier Boy. And he can fly.
This sounds simple until you think through what it actually means in a fight. Soldier Boy's nuke blast is devastating, but it takes time to charge. That charging window is visible. Homelander demonstrated in their first fight exactly what you do with that window. You get vertical, you get out of range, and you come back down at a time and angle of your choosing. Soldier Boy can't follow him up there. He can't close the distance in the air. He can't stop Homelander from backing off and re-engaging on his own terms. Every fight Soldier Boy wins in the show. He wins on the ground in close quarters where his strength and durability can do the work.
Hell of thing.
His shield, his combat instincts, his ability to absorb punishment and keep throwing, all of it requires the opponent to be standing in front of him, take the ground away, and his entire fighting style falls apart. Homelander spent decades as the unkillable thing at the top of the food chain, specifically because nobody could reach him up there. Soldier Boy doesn't change that equation. Think about how Homelander actually fights when he isn't holding back. He doesn't brawl. He overwhelms, he comes from angles that are hard to track, he uses altitude to break lines of sight, and he resets whenever a situation starts going against him. That's the fighting style of someone who has had 30 years to develop a game plan that nobody else can answer. Like, Soldier Boy spent 40 of his most recent years in a Russian cryo facility. He came out of that with his strength and durability intact, and his nuke blast is a new addition.
I've been in for 1,000 hours. Still won't cut Soldier Boy's skin.
What he didn't come out with is a counter to an aerial opponent who can cook him from 100 feet up. That gap in his toolkit is the gap that decides this fight. The laser eyes compound this further. Homelander can engage from range from altitude in conditions where Soldier Boy has no answer. Soldier Boy's shield can absorb the beams at close range, but the shield is not useful if Homelander is circling at 100 feet and cooking him from above. And unlike the nuke blast, the laser eyes have no charging time, no warning, no visible tell. You put these two abilities together, and you have a fighter who can dictate the range, the altitude, and the timing of every exchange in the fight. Soldier Boy can't take those variables away from him. The compound V depowering effect is real and it's dangerous, but the blast itself has serious limitations that the show made very clear and most people chose to ignore. First, it's not instant. The energy has to build in Soldier Boy's chest before he can release it. In a fight against someone operating at Homelander's speed and intelligence, that buildup is a tell. Homelander saw it coming at Herogasm and made the correct decision to create distance rather than eat a direct hit.
Do it!
Second, Soldier Boy can't aim it. The blast is omnidirectional. It's a detonation, not a beam. That means using it in close quarters costs Soldier Boy the same ground advantage that makes him dangerous. Like, the closer he gets to land the hit, the more exposed he becomes in the window before it fires. And if Homelander is airborne when it goes off, the blast radius may not even reach him. Third, and most importantly, the depowering effect has only been conclusively shown against Supes with less durable biology than Homelander. Kimiko's healing factor was burned out, Maeve lost her powers entirely, but Homelander was literally engineered as the apex version of everything Compound V can produce. His body is not a standard Compound V result.
See if you could burn my skin. Even though my skin didn't char, it still really hurt. I remember there was people standing here taking notes.
It's a specifically optimized version of the formula designed to be better than everything that came before it, including Soldier Boy. Whether a single blast would be enough to strip him, or whether his biology would require multiple direct hits to burn out, is something the show never actually tested. Homelander left before that experiment could run. There's also the question of what happens between blasts. Soldier Boy fires, there's a cooldown, and in that window, he is just a very strong guy with a shield. Against Homelander, that window is the entire fight. One missed blast, or one blast that doesn't fully depower him, and Soldier Boy has nothing left to fall back on except the close quarters game that Homelander can simply refuse to play. What the show gave us instead was Homelander consciously deciding not to find out. That's fear, yes. But it's also tactical intelligence. He didn't stand there and take the hit to prove he could absorb it. He removed himself from the situation. That's the behavior of someone who understands that unnecessary risk is still risk.
Oh, no. I'm the upgrade.
Here is the one area where the Soldier Boy argument is legitimately strong and deserves a straight answer. Soldier Boy is more durable than almost anything the show has tested. The Russian experiments threw everything at him for 40 years and came up empty. Acid, fire, power tools, radiation. Nothing worked from the outside, so they tried working from the inside, and that didn't work either. He absorbed Homelander's hits at Herogasm without visible bruising. That's a durability ceiling that nobody else in the show has come close to demonstrating, but here's what that durability actually means in this fight. Lasting longer under punishment from a superior opponent isn't the same as overcoming the gap in capabilities. Homelander's laser eyes can damage Soldier Boy over a sustained period, even if a single shot doesn't drop him.
Can we just skip to the part where you laser my brains out?
Where's the sport in that?
Time is on Homelander's side in that exchange because Soldier Boy has no equivalent sustained ranged weapon to trade back with. Everyone gives Soldier Boy credit for 80 years of combat. Fair. But Homelander has spent his entire life as the most powerful thing in any room he has ever entered. That shapes how you fight in a very specific way. John has never had to develop defensive instincts because nothing has ever threatened him enough to require them. He has never had to learn to protect himself because protection was never necessary. What he developed instead was offensive dominance, the ability to end a fight before it becomes won. Overwhelming force applied immediately and decisively. That approach has worked against every Soupy the show has put in front of him. Soldier Boy is the first person who forced Homelander to actually defend, and Homelander didn't panic. He adapted mid-fight. He recognized the threat the blast represented. He disengaged, and he reassessed. Someone who'd never faced a real threat wouldn't adapt that cleanly mid-fight. John did. There's also the psychological dimension that Season 3 leaned into hard. Homelander's emotional instability is real, and it's a liability in prolonged fights. Soldier Boy understood this immediately. He knew that telling John he was a disappointment would land harder than any punch.
Maybe if I'd raised you, I could have made you better.
You.
I know. You're a disappointment.
That psychological read is genuinely impressive, and in a slow, long conflict where sustained pressure matters, it gives Soldier Boy a real edge. But Soldier Boy's ability to exploit that psychology is entirely dependent on being in the room to exploit it. The moment Homelander decides the psychological game is over and switches to pure aggression from altitude, Soldier Boy doesn't have the mobility or the ranged offense to keep him at arm's length. You can't get into someone's head from the ground while they're cooking you from the sky. The mental edge only matters if you survive long enough to use it. Most people remember Herogasm as the fight where Soldier Boy almost beat Homelander.
Still a thing, eh?
It's my thing. I founded it in 52. Me and this other suit, Liberty. Man, we shoot firecracker.
Go back and watch it again. Homelander takes a direct laser blast from Soldier Boy early in the fight and shrugs it off. Soldier Boy's chest is not a laser, it's a nuclear energy blast. The distinction matters because the show was specifically telling you that Soldier Boy's primary offensive weapon is not a laser, and the show's primary laser is Homelander's eyes, which Soldier Boy absorbed. Two different weapons hitting two different targets. Then Homelander pins Soldier Boy to the floor. He doesn't pin him briefly and get thrown off. He holds him there. It takes Butcher physically intervening to break that hold. Homelander holds Soldier Boy down with one hand while Butcher's hanging off him, which tells you everything you need to know about the physical gap in that exchange. Then Soldier Boy fires his nuke blast. Homelander doesn't tank it and walk through it. He gets thrown back, visibly staggered, and shows genuine fear of the blast in a way he has never shown fear of anything else in the show. That fear is real.
This is still a top 3 day in my life. Because today is the day I saw you scared.
It's the one moment in the fight that actually belongs to Soldier Boy as a clean win. He fired it, Homelander felt it, and Homelander decided the risk of a second hit wasn't worth finding out what a direct strike does. But here is the thing about that moment. Homelander wasn't physically defeated. He chose to disengage from a situation with an unpredictable risk factor. He walked out of that building on his own. Soldier Boy didn't chase him. He couldn't. By the time the blast cleared, the fight was over because Homelander left, not because Soldier Boy had anything left to press the advantage with. That's the honest read of Herogasm. Soldier Boy had one moment of dominance. Homelander adapted. The fight ended on Homelander's terms. The finale is the best evidence we have, and it should be looked at objectively without the bias of who we are rooting for. The room had Soldier Boy, Butcher dosed on Temp V, and Huey dosed on Temp V. 3 opponents, 2 of whom were temporarily operating above their normal ceiling. Homelander was winning. He pinned them. Like, he wasn't desperate or hanging on. He was controlling the fight against all 3 of them simultaneously while coming apart emotionally over his son. That last part is important. Homelander, at his most psychologically fractured, in the worst possible mental state against a coalition built specifically to kill him, was still physically winning the room.
I'm offering you the opportunity to get them and got your girl.
What have you got to lose?
Soldier Boy didn't beat him, Ryan stopped the fight. Those aren't the same thing. The show made a narratively satisfying choice that paid off 3 seasons of Homelander wanting a father and Ryan choosing to be something different, that choice was earned. It was also not a verdict on who wins the fight. Homelander left that building on his own legs. Soldier Boy didn't chase him. The fight ended because the show needed it to end there, and if you strip that away, you are left with a 4-on-1 that Homelander was handling. Here is where the debate falls apart. Take the emotional stakes of Season 3 out of it, take Ryan out of it, take Butcher and Huey out of it, put both of them in a field and let it run. Homelander opens at altitude. The nuke blast needs him close and in front. He never gives Soldier Boy that. He circles, dives, and forces Soldier Boy to track him from the ground, while the laser eyes do their work at a range where no ground-based fighter can respond. The fight doesn't go long, and Homelander is smart enough to know that going in. He identified the blast as a threat the first time he saw it on the news. He was already building the game plan before the fight started. That's not the behavior of someone who stumbles into a loss. That's the behavior of someone who already knows how it ends. Because Season 3 did exactly what it was supposed to do. It made Soldier Boy feel like a genuine threat. It gave him moments of dominance. It built a legitimate emotional case for why he might be the answer to Homelander. The show is very good at making you feel things that the underlying facts do not entirely support. The nuke blast is terrifying to watch, the durability feats are genuinely impressive. The hero-gasm moment where Homelander retreats gets burned into your memory as the moment Homelander finally met someone he couldn't handle, but retreating from a situation where a depowering blast might fire is not the same as losing the fight. And winning in a room with 4 opponents simultaneously is not the same as losing to Soldier Boy specifically.
We made a deal to fight till the death. You and me. This is cheating. Deal's off.
Homelander was engineered to be the final form of what Compound 5 can produce. Soldier Boy was the prototype. The whole premise of Vought creating Homelander was that they wanted to improve on what they had. They wanted more power, more control, more versatility in every measurable category except close quarters durability and the nuke blast. They succeeded. The final form beats the prototype. The gap is not as close as Season 3 made it feel. And honestly, that's good storytelling. The show didn't lie to you about Soldier Boy's capabilities. He is genuinely formidable. He genuinely scared Homelander. He genuinely changed the dynamic of Season 3 in ways that felt earned. But making something feel close is not the same as the math actually being close. The best rivalry storytelling makes you forget, for a stretch, that one side was always going to come out ahead. Season 3 did that exceptionally well. The matchup is not Soldier Boy versus Homelander. It's an 80-year-old prototype with one game-changing ability against a flying, laser-eyed, near-invincible Apex Soupy who can take the fight anywhere he wants. Soldier Boy needs Homelander on the ground in front of him, close enough to charge and fire. Homelander never has to give him any of that. If you want the full breakdown of where Homelander actually ranks against every Soupy in the boys, that video is on screen right now.